Good to see you, Alistair. I never would have predicted that your remarks would be this pertinent in the middle of well, the global situation. But something around uh, defense and Canada's forward look around procurement and many other aspects. I'm sure you can help us calibrate uh, how we should look at these issues of defense procurement and other related matters. So please.
Sure. Okay, well, thanks. Thanks very much, Yatin, and thanks, Madeline. And I'll just go, some faces I don't know or names, but Alan, hello. And I see Ernie, my old friend and colleague Ernie there. Good to see your name up there as well, Ernie. So hello. Um, yeah, I'll aim at sort of that 15 to 20-minute range. And a little bit of it is, I suppose, history, but necessary context, and then a little bit about how that um, is more pertinent today. So, um, for Canada, at least, since we gave up on what we'd call defense industrial autarky or independence and got rid of the Avro and all these kind of things, um, our defense procurement, our equipment, our supplies, and our defense industry, such as it is, has been heavily integrated into and with the United States. Aside from shipbuilding and light armored vehicles, defense industries in Canada have been primarily small and medium-sized enterprises. They're not building major platforms, particularly other than the ships. And we were for many years essentially a parts supplier, particularly to the United States. There was an old organization called the North American Defense Industrial Base Organization, NADIBO, and people looking at Canada, US defense production, defense equipment, call that the NADIB, like the North American Defense Industrial Base, which gives you a sense that we were treated ourselves as what was called secure seconds suppliers or secure suppliers to essentially the United States defense industry. Back in my olden days as a PhD student, I wrote a book about the Canadian defense industry, and as part of that, I did interview a lot of those at that. So we're going back 40 years, 35 years. A lot of defense industry executives, and I would ask them whether they had considered diversifying their market, if you will, their partners into Europe or Asia. And pretty much 100% of the smaller companies answer was no. The American market is by far the largest, largest, easiest for us. We have recognition as secure suppliers into there. And as small companies, they would tell me, we also don't have the marketing, the expertise, the people to chase contracts in a European defense market, which by itself is also quite exclusionary. The Europeans want to build and buy their own things back then. So for several decades, the Canadian industry and our equipment has been heavily US dependent. We've had the defense development sharing arrangements and the defense production sharing arrangement, DDSA and DPSA, which are regulatory. They're not treaty-based access. We're not treaty-based access to the US defense market. They're regulatory, which at that time meant that they could be affected by lobbying American suppliers, lobbying Congress. Classic examples being, the width of anchor chains. They must be a certain length. A US anchor chain manufacturer would lobby to Congress. Congress would pass that, and that would exclude Canadian anchor chain suppliers, etc. So there was discussion about whether there should be a treaty-based arrangement, but that never really came about on the defense side of things. And to some extent, that was okay, because the the challenges, if you will, the external challenges, the US-based challenges to Canadian manufacturers came idiosyncratically, individually, by lobbying on particular projects. But the US, the Pentagon, the US Defense Department, and the US administrations saw Canadian companies in Canada as a secure second source. So if you want to put it that way, treaty-based wasn't really an issue as long as there was some form of, on the macro political scale, trust. Trust from Canada in the US administration. And obviously that's what has been shattered over certainly the last 15 months, if not the 4-year period previously with Donald Trump in government. So trust has been broken on that political level. It's not the same, I think, at, if you want to call it, the professional military level. The Canadian Air Force folks are closely integrated in and with the Americans on a professional to professional basis because of NORAD and decades of experience. And they continue, with the one example being the F-35, to be major advocates of the F-35 is the best thing ever. We must buy the F-35. We must have all of them, all 88, blah, blah. It's the most advanced platform. It is necessary to continue our close cooperation with our excellent colleagues in the US Air Force. So they've been an advocate of that. But that's also been on a, if you want, soldier to soldier basis as well. So the political fracture is not the same as a military fracture in that sense. Soldiers, although our forces, I believe, were, and nor was our government, consulted in any advanced way about attacks on Iran, but also our forces who are embedded with US forces, I think, were moved out. We're not part of planning of that, which is different from 2003, when Canadian individual soldiers who were seconded to American units were part of America's illegal attacks on Saddam Hussein's Iraq. They weren't decision makers, but they were part of the enterprise at that time. So the real issue has been this fracture in trust, and from that, then things that have cascaded out of that. So let me talk a little bit, and I'm assuming most people have some sense of these things, but I'll give a little bit of background. Before Prime Minister Carney announced the defense industrial strategy, we had started to move. Obviously, we had announced that there would be large increases in defense spending, but part of what Canada had done, what the Carney government had done, was reach out to our European NATO partners. And Canada became, I don't think the UK has yet become, I don't know if you know this at all, but Canada became the only non-EU or non-European partner, European Economic Area partner, as part of the Rearm Europe and the SAFE program. What those are for the EU and its immediate partners is a massive financing mechanism and investment mechanism. So we signed up to SAFE, which is the Security Action, for Europe, SAFE, which is in Canadian dollars, I tried to check on the exchange rate, about 250 billion Canadian dollar financing mechanism that allows European Union member states to gain access to relatively, especially smaller ones, not the larger ones like France, to gain access to low interest rate, long-term repayment loans that don't come up against the EU's debt issues in managing member states. So it takes them outside of that, and it gets them competitive pricing on loans that they can apply for, and obviously favored access to those loans. Canada applied for that to be a partner. Canada was admitted to that. The UK applied for that, and this comes back not just vindictiveness about Brexit, but probably a little bit of that. But the terms that the UK was willing to present to the European Union and vice versa, neither side would accept. So the United Kingdom was not admitted to the SAFE program. Canada has been. So we've got access to European companies and European member states. And if they want to partner with us for parts, for production, for R&D, we can partner with them as they get access to this funding. What is now called, I think, Readiness 2030, but when I used to look at it, Rearm Europe plan, the larger plan, in Canadian dollars is about a 1.3 or 1.5 trillion dollar rearmament plan for Europe. And that's with massive increases in national defense budgets, right? So they are significantly increasing. I was looking at Sweden just before I came on, just to have a look because of the Gripen. They're part of all of that. So an enormous, historically large reinvestment plan in defense procurement, defense budgets in Europe. So Canada is now part of that, can be invited, can compete for pieces of that as we're admitted into that program. So that is part of increasing the, if you want, market access for Canadian defense manufacturers, defense producers, research companies, etc. So the SAFE program I'll put to one side for a moment, and I'll keep an eye on the time. Madeline, wave at me, okay? I will aim for like 15 because I'm happy to talk in more detail about things. Then we've had, obviously, Prime Minister Carney saying we're going to invest up to 2%, and then we're going to invest up to 5% of GDP into defense and defense-related, which includes procurement, but also has already included improved salaries for and benefits and housing investments for our forces, because that's been a problem of retention for the existing forces that we have, the people in uniform. So the Canada's Defence Industrial Strategy, I don't know if people saw this, but I think it was just yesterday, or at least I noticed it yesterday, an announcement within some of that, that there's been a $900 million project just announced in Montreal, which is going to be, a chunk of that is a sixth and a new Bombardier aircraft, but that aircraft is being built and specially equipped for defense technology testing, and an investment also in Montreal in a drone hub or drone innovation hub. So that almost $1 billion investment was just announced in the last day or two. But the Defense Industrial Strategy is trying to simplify a very complex defense procurement, defense investment infrastructure in Canada, where various parts of the defense budget and assessments about bids from companies is tied to regional industrial benefits, or what's now called industrial and technological benefits. So it was always a problem that defense budgets, seen as a problem by some, that defense budgets were really used for regional industrial and economic development, not for the actual projects themselves. And so that costs went up, and timelines were delayed, and things became far more complex. What we now have as innovation science, Canada, ISED Canada, Public Procurement Canada, and D&D and then industry and trade would all be part of any decisions. The creation of the Defense Investment Agency has meant to try to cut through some of that red tape, and the defense industry strategy that has been put forward tries to do a number of things to promote what they call, build and buy in Canada, preferably at any rate. What's this proper? Build, partner, and buy. Buying other stuff if we must do, but only from other places like Europe. It's a quiet way of saying get away from the United States. So the DIA is meant to try to provide a single point of contact for bids, single point of contact for industry, and try to simplify but not eliminate ideas about regional, industrial, and technological benefits and other things. So trying to deal with the infrastructure, if you will, and provide industry with long-term investment opportunities, because one of the big problems for industry in Canada is it's a very small market, domestic market, which means it's heavily dependent on exports. And that makes it very hard for industry to assume any kind of 10-year investment timeline, train up workforces, do those other things. So DIS is trying to address those kind of bureaucratic and long-term investment signals to industry. So there's that. Okay. Last one I'll do on this, because this is the one that everybody chats about all the time. F-35 versus Saab Gripen. Do we want Lockheed and the United States, enormously expensive, arguably enormously capable F-35 aircraft, which continues to tie us for decades into the United States and whoever succeeds Trump and any relationships that may change there. We've already bought and paid for 16. And recently, quietly, DND announced that it had paid for parts, long lead parts, for another 14. So 30, arguably, platforms we've either originally confirmed or we've invested in. Those who say get out say the investment in those 14 can be spare parts for the 16 that we're committed to, but it doesn't quite work that way. The F-35, what's controversial because of the breakdown in trust, is there isn't a kill switch per se. You don't get to switch them off. Trump can't threaten to do that. But it is such a high-tech platform that the cloud-based system that they use for upgrading into the high stealth technology, and also for uploading mission data into the F-35, is all held at and managed on US systems in the United States. So the US arguably could hold that over Canada if we disagree with an American policy of some kind. And we've seen from Trump, he could decide to do that on anything for any reason, anytime he gets his nose out of joint. The Saab offer as an alternative, the Saab Gripen, still an expensive aircraft, not stealth technology the way that the F-35 is, but with benefits in the sense that it is much cheaper to run, to maintain. It is much more flexible in its operations. It, as people say, can take off from roads. I mean, it's built to be able to take off from roads in Sweden and operate well in very low temperatures, which has been a problem for some of the technology of the F-35. Norway says it's done okay, but F-35s have had to cancel flights and return home as some of their technology hasn't been working in very low Arctic temperatures, for example. The F-35 is also really built as a stealth bomber. The reason it's stealthy isn't so that it can detect and deter Russian bombers flying over the Arctic. When you're going to do that, you want to be seen. It is designed to be able to go into very difficult, high anti-aircraft environments to deliver weapons and come back safely. The Gripen is not that, but the Gripen's availability, its maintenance is much lower, and its availability is much higher per sortie. So the F-35, as I understand it, its availability rate is about 35 to 40%. So if you have 10 of them, then on average, about 3.5 or 4 of them are going to be available for use at any point in time. The Gripen is much higher, around 8 out of 10, and much faster turnaround. So arguably, there's that side of the actual platform. But more importantly for Canada, Saab has said, if we buy them, and they've offered, I think, 72, they can be manufactured, built in Canada. Facilities will be built in Canada, and the IP for those can be transferred to Canada. So Canada then has its own, if you will, control over its own aircraft, and then would be partnering with Saab on marketing overseas as well. And Saab has offered to go along with that, the Global Eye. I think it's called Global Eye. The American is Global Hawk. The Global Eye system for airborne early warning. So they're giving a very attractive package to a country that is concerned about the reliability, the broken trust with the United States. As I said, the Air Force, the Canadian Air Force, loves the F-35 because it's all high-tech. And others say, well, you can't have a mixed fleet because Canada is not big enough. We don't have enough pilots. We need then 2 logistics chains, etc. Pretty much every other G7 country has a mixed fleet. So one of the responses to that is, if Canada can't support a mixed fleet, the problem isn't the aircraft. It's a bigger problem with Canada and the Air Force. And that's something else to be addressed because, again, we have a significant broken trust with our American allies. So I'll leave it at that. It's 11:25:27 by my clock. I'm happy to chat to any of those things. And also, if people are interested, particularly in the F-35 versus Gripen results, I've got information from a few people about how well reportedly the F-35 has operated, but some of that has been deeply exaggerated because it depends on what they're meant to do and in what environment. And on the other side of it, how well the Gripen does and its limitations as well. And if people want to talk about other systems, of course, aircraft are not the only thing. There's the other big procurement right now is the submarine, which is between ThyssenKrupp of Germany and South Korean partners. So that's the other major platform that we're waiting on both cases to hear what the government is deciding.